The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with silence. Thousands of alien delegates sat in their seats, watching with cold eyes. Some had scales that shone like metal. Others had skin like flowing water. A few were made of pure light. They came from every corner of the galaxy, and today they had gathered for one purpose: to judge humanity. Admiral stood alone in the center of the chamber. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face marked by many years of war and peace. His uniform was clean and pressed, but it felt heavy on his shoulders. Behind him, through a massive window, he could see the fleet of human ships waiting in orbit. Millions of his people were watching this moment through screens and broadcasts. They were waiting to hear their fate. The High Speaker of the Council rose from his seat. He was a creature with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like distant stars. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "Humanity," the High Speaker said, "you have been found guilty. Your species is too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable. You have started wars. You have destroyed planets. You have refused to follow the laws of this council." Wanted to speak. He wanted to tell them that humans had also built hospitals on dying worlds. They had saved species from extinction. They had shared their food when others were starving. But he knew his words would mean nothing. The council had already decided. "The sentence is exile," the High Speaker continued. "You will be sent to the Void Sector. You will lose all rights to trade, travel, and communicate with Council space. Your technology will be taken. Your star maps will be erased. You will have nothing." A sound moved through the chamber. It was not quite laughter, but something close to it. The alien delegates were pleased. Humanity, the troublemakers of the galaxy, would finally be gone. Commander stood near the back of the chamber. She was younger than, with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had been his translator and advisor for many years. Now she watched as everything they had built was taken away. She pressed a button on her communicator. Her voice went out to every human ship, every colony, every station still loyal to Earth. "The sentence has been given," she said quietly. "We are exiled. Prepare to move to the Void Sector." The response came back as a wave of shock and anger. People cried, people shouted, but underneath all the noise heard something else. She heard determination. Humans did not give up easily. Turned to face the council one last time. He did not beg. He did not threaten. He simply looked at each delegate with steady eyes. "You think this is our end," he said. His voice was calm but strong. "You think the void will kill us, but you are wrong. We have survived ice ages. We have survived plagues. We have survived ourselves. The void is just another challenge." The High Speaker waved one of his 4 hands. "Take him away. The exile begins now." Guards moved forward. They were tall creatures with hard shells and weapons that hummed with energy. Let them lead him out of the chamber. He had said what needed to be said. On the flagship Dawn of Earth, Doctor was running through the corridors. She was a small woman with messy hair and eyes that never stopped moving. In her arms, she carried data tablets and storage devices. The Council had ordered all human technology to be destroyed, but had hidden the most important files. Years of research, secrets about faster-than-light travel, information about energy sources that the Council had banned. All of it was now pressed against her chest as she ran toward the escape pods. A young officer named Minu found her in the corridor. "Doctor, what are you doing? We need to go to the assembly point." "These files," said, breathing hard, "these files are our future. The Council thinks they are taking everything from us, but they forgot about what we keep in our minds. They forgot about human curiosity." Minu looked at the tablets. He did not fully understand what they contained, but he understood the look in his eyes. It was the look of someone who had not given up. "I will help you," he said. "Where do we need to take them?" Together they moved through the ship. Around them, people were crying and holding each other. Families were saying goodbye to the lives they had known. Children asked their parents why they had to leave. No one had good answers. The fleet began to move. 100,000 ships, carrying everything that remained of human civilization, turned toward the edge of known space. Behind them, the Council's vessels formed a wall of metal and light, making sure the humans would not turn back. Found on the observation deck, he was watching the stars pass by, his hands clasped behind his back. She stood beside him in silence for a long moment. "What do we do now?" she finally asked. "Did not look away from the stars. We survive, we adapt, we grow." "The void sector has nothing," said. "No habitable planets, no resources, no allies. The Council chose it because nothing can live there." "Nothing has lived there yet," corrected her. "Humans have a gift for living in impossible places. We built cities in deserts. We farmed on mountains. We made homes in frozen wastelands." He turned to look at her. "The void is just another desert, and we will make it bloom." Wanted to believe him. She wanted to share his hope. But the darkness outside the window was so complete, so endless, that it was hard to imagine anything growing there. The journey to the void took 3 months. During that time, organized the fleet. He made sure that every ship had enough food, water, and air. He settled arguments between captains. He visited the sick and comforted the dying. Worked without sleep. She gathered every scientist, every engineer, every curious mind she could find. They studied her hidden files. They argued about theories. They began to dream of what might be possible. On the last day of the journey, the fleet reached the edge of the void sector. There was no official border, no marker in space. There was only a point where the stars became fewer, where the light grew dim, and where the galaxy seemed to end. Addressed the fleet one final time. His face appeared on every screen in every ship. "Today we enter our prison," he said. "But I do not see a prison, I see a home that is waiting to be built. The Council wanted us to disappear. They wanted us to be forgotten, but we are humans. We do not disappear, we do not forget, and we do not forgive." He paused, letting his words settle into the hearts of his people. "One day we will return. One day the Council will look to the stars and see our ships filling the sky, and on that day they will remember why they were afraid of us in the first place." The fleet moved forward. 100,000 ships crossed into the darkness. Behind them, the lights of Council space faded away like dying embers. Stood at her station, recording everything. Someone needed to remember this moment. Someone needed to write it down for the children who would be born in the void, children who would never know the warmth of a natural sun. She looked at who stood like a statue at the center of the bridge. His eyes were fixed on the darkness ahead, but there was no fear in them, only fire. The exile had begun, and with it, the first chapter of an empire that would one day stretch across eternity. 3 generations passed in the darkness of the void sector. Children were born who had never seen a blue sky. They grew old and had children of their own. The original exiles became legends, their stories told around dim lights in metal corridors. Admiral had died in the 23rd year of exile. He passed quietly in his sleep, surrounded by his officers and the people who loved him. His last words were simple: "Keep building." They carved his name into the hull of the flagship, and they did exactly what he asked. Now his great-grandson, Captain, stood on the bridge of the horizon. The ship was different from the vessels that had entered the void so long ago. It was stronger, faster, and built from materials that did not exist in Council space. Humans had learned to use what the void offered, and the void offered strange things. Was young for a captain, only 32 years old. He had dark hair that he kept short and eyes that his crew said could see through walls. He had been born on a mining station near a dying star, and he had worked his way up through skill and determination. His navigation officer was a woman named Bora. She had a gift for reading the patterns of space, for finding paths where others saw only emptiness. Today, she had found something that made her heart beat faster. "Captain," she said, her voice tight with excitement, "I need you to see this." walked to her station. The screen showed a map of local space, filled with the usual darkness and scattered rocks. But in the center, there was something new, a strange pattern of energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. "What am I looking at?" asked. "I do not know," Bora admitted, "but it is not natural. Someone built this, and it is very, very old." Studied the pattern. During his grandfather's time, humans had mapped most of the void sector. They had found empty planets, dead moons, and fields of asteroids. They had not found anything like this. "Take us closer," he ordered. The horizon moved through the darkness. As they approached the energy pattern, the crew grew silent. Everyone could feel that something important was about to happen. What they found changed everything. It was a wormhole. Not a natural one, but a machine, built by hands that had turned to dust millions of years ago. The structure was massive, a ring of ancient metal floating in the void, and it was connected to others. Bora's instruments showed a network stretching across the sector, dozens of wormholes all linked together. "The Council said nothing could survive here," whispered. "They were wrong. Something was here before them, something that built roads through the darkness." Back on the main colony ship New Earth, Doctor's granddaughter was working in her laboratory. Her name was, and she had inherited her grandmother's curiosity and her messy hair. She had spent her whole life studying the hidden files that had saved from the Council. When she heard about the wormhole network, she laughed out loud. Then she cried. Then she got to work. "These wormholes," she told the Colony Council, "they are the key to everything. The Council controls travel in their space through regulated gates. They charge for every jump. They track every ship. But this network is free. It is hidden. And if we can make it work, we can go anywhere." The Colony Council was made up of the leaders of the major ships and stations. They listened to with careful attention. Among them was a strategist named Minu, now an old man who had helped save research during the exile. He remembered hiding in corridors, clutching data tablets while the world fell apart around him. "How long will it take?" Minu asked. 5 years, said. "Maybe 10. The technology is advanced, but it is based on principles we understand. We can learn from it. We can improve it." "Do it," the Council agreed. The next decade was the hardest time in human history since the exile itself. Every resource was directed toward understanding the ancient network. Engineers worked until they collapsed. Scientists argued until they lost their voices. Failures came again and again, each one teaching a new lesson. But humans were stubborn. They did not stop. A young engineer named made the breakthrough. She was barely 20 years old, a quiet girl who spent more time with machines than with people. She noticed a pattern in the energy flow that everyone else had missed. When she adjusted the calculations, the first test ship jumped successfully through a wormhole and appeared on the other side in perfect condition. Became a hero overnight. They named a station after her. The network opened new possibilities. Ships could now travel across the void sector in hours instead of months. Resources that had seemed far away were suddenly within reach. Humans spread out, building colonies in places that had been empty since the universe was young. They found planets hidden in the folds of space, strange worlds where the rules were different. One planet had metal that grew like plants. Another had oceans of liquid energy that could power entire fleets. A third had crystals that stored information like living computers. Minu, despite his age, led the effort to develop new military strategies. The void had made humans hard, and Minu wanted them to be smart as well. He trained officers in patience and deception. He taught them that the best victory was one where the enemy never saw you coming. "One day," he told his students, "we will face the Council again. When that day comes, we must be ready, not just with weapons but with ideas. The Council is old. They have not changed in 10,000 years, but we change every day. That is our greatest strength." The humans also found other exiles. The Council had been throwing away species it did not like for centuries. In the forgotten corners of the void, there were civilizations that had survived, just like humanity had. There were the Pale Ones, beings of living ice who had been banished for refusing to work in the Council's mines. There were the Singers, creatures who communicated through music and had been exiled for spreading dangerous ideas. There were the Stone Folk, slow and patient, who had been cast out for being too different. Captain met with their leaders. He offered them something the Council never had: respect. "We do not want to rule you," he told them. "We want to stand beside you. The Council made us all outcasts. Together, we can build something better." The alliances were not easy. Different species had different needs, different cultures, different ways of seeing the universe. There were misunderstandings and arguments, but slowly trust grew. The outcasts of the galaxy began to see themselves as a family. By the time was an old man, the human fleet had grown to 10,000 ships. The colonies numbered in the hundreds. The alliance included a dozen species, all working together toward a common goal. Stood on the bridge of the Horizon one last time. His hair was white now, and his hands were not as steady as they used to be, but his eyes still burned with the same fire. Bora, also old but still at her station, looked at him with a smile. "Your grandmother told you stories about Earth," she said, "about blue skies and green forests." "She did," said, "I never saw them, but my will." The fleet was ready. For 100 years, humans had been building in silence. They had turned their prison into a fortress. They had made allies of the forgotten. They had developed technology that the Council could not imagine. Now it was time to return. Gave his last order as captain. Set course for Council space. It is time to remind the galaxy that humanity did not die in the darkness. We were born again. The wormhole network activated. 10,000 ships vanished from the void sector, jumping toward a future that would shake the foundations of the galaxy. The wilderness years were over. The silent expansion was about to begin. The Galactic Council did not notice at first. They had forgotten about humanity. 100 years was a long time, even for species that lived for centuries. The humans had been sent to die in the void, and as far as the Council knew, they had done exactly that. But strange reports began to arrive from the outer edges of Council space. A trading station near the border claimed to have seen ships of unknown design. A patrol vessel disappeared without explanation. A communications relay picked up signals in a language that had not been heard for 100 years. Human signals. The Council dismissed the reports. They were mistakes, they said, echoes from the past. The humans were gone. There was nothing to worry about. Ambassador knew better. He was the first human to enter Council space in over a century. He came on a ship that was small but beautiful, its hull decorated with symbols that told the story of exile and rebirth. He requested permission to address the Council, and because the Council was curious, they allowed it. Was a careful man with a calm face and gentle voice. He had been chosen for this mission because he knew how to speak without giving away secrets. He knew how to smile while hiding his true thoughts. He stood in the same chamber where Admiral had been sentenced to exile. The alien delegates looked down at him with expressions of shock and confusion. How was a human standing here? How had he survived? "Honored members of the Council," began, "I bring greetings from the human sovereignty. We have come to inform you that we are not dead. We are not forgotten. We have built a new civilization in the space you gave us, and we wish to establish peaceful relations with our neighbors." The chamber exploded with noise. Delegates shouted questions. Some demanded that be arrested. Others wanted to know how this was possible. The High Speaker, a different one from the creature who had exiled humanity, raised his many hands for silence. "The human sovereignty," he asked. "What is this? The void sector cannot support life. Your people were sent there to die." Smile did not change. The void was difficult, he admitted, But humans are difficult too. We found ways to survive. We found resources you did not know existed. We found allies among the other species you abandoned." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We now control 200 star systems. Our population is growing. Our technology has advanced. We are here to talk about the future." The council did not know what to say. For the first time in 10,000 years, they had been surprised. While spoke soft words in the council chamber, General worked in silence. She was a woman of action, not speeches. Her hair was cut short for efficiency, and her uniform carried the marks of 20 campaigns. She had fought pirates, rebels, and monsters in the dark corners of the void. Now she was preparing for the greatest challenge of her life. Commanded the stealth fleet. These were ships designed to be invisible, to move without being detected, to strike without warning. They had been positioned along the major trade routes of Council space, waiting for orders that might never come. "Our job is to watch," told her captains through encrypted channels. "We do not attack unless attacked. We do not reveal ourselves unless necessary, but we make sure that every important location is covered. If the Council decides to betray us, they will discover that we are already everywhere." Her officers nodded and obeyed. They had trained for this their entire lives. Patience was their weapon. Silence was their shield. Back on the colony worlds, a scientist named was finishing her greatest work. She was young, only 28, but she had already solved problems that had defeated scientists for generations. Her specialty was space itself, the fabric of the universe, the way that matter and energy moved through dimensions. Had discovered how to fold space. "With this technology," she explained to the Sovereignty Council, "our ships can appear anywhere instantly. No wormhole required. No travel time. One moment you are here, the next you are on the other side of the galaxy." The council members looked at each other. This changed everything. The council controlled travel through their gate network. Without the gates, ships had to travel slowly, taking months or years to cross long distances. But if humans could fold space, they needed nothing from the council. They could go anywhere, do anything, without asking permission. "How soon can the fleet be equipped?" the council leader asked. 6 months for the main battle groups, said. A year for the entire fleet. "Begin immediately." In the shadows of council space, another human was at work. Her name was, and she was the Sovereignty Spymaster. She was a small woman with an ordinary face, the kind of person you would pass on the street without noticing. That was exactly what made her dangerous. Had placed operatives on every major council world. They worked as servants, traders, translators, and technicians. They listened. They watched. They sent back reports through hidden channels. "The council is afraid," reported to her superiors. "They do not understand how we survived. They do not know how strong we have become. Their intelligence services are searching for answers, but they are looking in the wrong places." She had also discovered the council's weaknesses. Many of the member species were unhappy. They paid heavy taxes. They were forced to follow laws they did not agree with. They remembered old insults and broken promises. "There are fractures," said. "If we push carefully, we can widen them. We do not need to fight the council. We can let it fall apart from within." Months passed. Ambassador continued his meetings with council officials. He was polite, patient, and always vague about the true strength of humanity. He never lied, but he never told the whole truth either. The council tried to spy on the human sovereignty, but their agents could not penetrate the void sector. The wormhole network was unknown to them. The fold technology was beyond their understanding. They sent probes and scouts, but the ships either disappeared or returned with nothing useful. Fear began to spread through the council halls. The humans had done something impossible. They had risen from death. What else might they be capable of? Some delegates argued for immediate war. Strike now, they said, before humanity grows stronger. But others pointed out that they did not know the size of the human fleet or the range of their weapons. A war could be costly. It could be lost. The debates went on for months, then years. The council could not agree. Use this time well. He met with representatives of the unhappy species, the ones who felt ignored or mistreated by the council. He offered them trade agreements, technology sharing, and something they had never received before: respect. "We do not wish to rule the galaxy," he told them. "We only want to live in peace, but peace requires strength. If you stand with us, we will stand with you." Many listened, many agreed. Meanwhile, the human expansion continued. New colonies were established in unclaimed space. Trade routes were opened with species outside the council. The sovereignty's economy grew stronger every year. General moved her fleets into position. Scientists continued to improve the fold technology. Spymaster gathered more secrets, more allies, more leverage. The council still did not fully understand what was happening. They saw pieces of the picture, but not the whole. They debated and argued while humanity quietly surrounded them. Finally, after 3 years of negotiations, Ambassador requested a final audience with the full council. Every delegate attended. They expected him to ask for official recognition, trade agreements, perhaps an apology for the exile. Stood in the center of the great chamber. He looked at the alien faces around him, the same species that had condemned his ancestors to death. He thought of Admiral, of Doctor, of all the people who had suffered so that this moment could exist. Then he smiled. "Honored delegates," he said, "for 3 years I have spoken with you about peace and cooperation. I have been patient. I have been polite, but now it is time for honesty." The chamber fell silent. "You exiled us to die," continued. "Instead, we learned to live without you. We built our own civilization, our own alliances, our own technology. We do not need your gates. We do not need your trade. We do not need your approval." He paused, letting his words echo through the chamber. "The human sovereignty is not asking for a place in your galaxy. We are informing you that we have already taken it. Our ships are positioned along every major route. Our allies are waiting for our signal. Our technology is beyond your ability to match." His gentle voice grew harder, sharper. "You have 2 choices. You can accept us as equals and work together toward a future of peace. Or you can fight us and discover what happens when you corner a species that has nothing left to lose." He turned and walked toward the exit. "The choice is yours, but I suggest you choose wisely. Humanity has a long memory, and we have been very patient." The doors closed behind him. The chamber erupted in chaos. The silent expansion was over. The reckoning was about to begin. The council chose war. Perhaps they believed their ancient fleets could crush the upstart humans. Perhaps they feared what would happen if they showed weakness. Perhaps old hatred made them blind to reason. Whatever the cause, 3 days after Ambassador's speech, the council voted for military action. "The humans must be contained," the High Speaker declared. "We will not allow them to threaten the peace of the galaxy." 17 battle fleets were assembled. They carried the most powerful weapons the council possessed. Their admirals were experienced commanders who had won 100 campaigns. They expected an easy victory against a species that had been scavenging in the void for a century. They were wrong. Admiral II commanded the defense. He was the great-grandson of the original admiral, and he had been trained since childhood for this moment. He had studied every battle in human history. He had learned from the mistakes of the past. He was ready. When the council fleets arrived at the Crimson Nebula, a beautiful cloud of red gas near human territory, they found the human ships waiting for them. But something was strange. The humans were outnumbered 3-1, yet they did not retreat. They simply floated in space, weapons powered down, as if they were waiting for something. "They want to surrender," one council admiral said. "The fools have realized they cannot win." But II was not surrendering. He was counting. At exactly the right moment, he gave the order, "Now." The human fleet vanished. For a heartbeat, the council commanders were confused. Where had the enemy gone? Then alarms began to scream on every ship. The humans had reappeared behind them, above them, below them, all around them. The fold technology allowed human vessels to jump instantly from one position to another and had planned his attack with perfect precision. The Battle of the Crimson Nebula lasted 7 hours. It was not a fight, it was a lesson. Commander led the fighter squadrons. She was a young pilot with reflexes faster than thought and courage that bordered on madness. Her squadron was called the Ghost Wings because their ships could phase through dimensions, appearing and disappearing like spirits. "Stay with me," she told her pilots. "Hit them fast, move before they can respond, never give them a target." The council ships tried to fight back, but they could not track targets that kept jumping through space. Their weapons hit nothing. Their shields failed against attacks that came from impossible angles. One by one, the council flagships fell. Some exploded. Some surrendered. Some tried to flee but found human ships blocking every escape route. By the time it was over, the council had lost 17 fleets. Humanity had lost 43 ships. The numbers were not even close. News of the battle spread across the galaxy. Species that had feared the council suddenly saw that the old power could be defeated. The impossible had happened. On the ground, Colonel led the liberation forces. He was a ground commander, a man who believed that space battles were only half the war. Real victory came from winning hearts and minds. His troops landed on council-controlled worlds, but they did not conquer. They freed. For thousands of years, the council had ruled through fear and control. Smaller species had been treated as servants, their resources taken, their voices ignored. "Change that. We are not here to replace your masters," he told the people of each world. "We are here to give you a choice. Join us freely or remain neutral. We will not force anyone, but we will not allow the council to hurt you anymore." Many chose to join. They remembered the cruelty they had suffered. They saw how the humans treated even their enemies with respect. Word spread from planet to planet. The humans were different. The humans could be trusted. Species that had been loyal to the council began to question their allegiance. Why serve masters who lost battles and treated them like property? Why not join a new alliance that offered freedom and partnership? The council's power began to crumble from within. Doctor, the descendant of the scientist who had saved humanity's knowledge during the exile, launched a different kind of attack. She broadcast humanity's story across every frequency in the galaxy. "This is the truth," her message began. 100 years ago, the Galactic Council exiled humanity to die. They took our technology, our maps, our hope. They sent us into the darkness and expected us to disappear. The broadcast showed images of the exile, of the early struggles in the void, of the deaths and the suffering. It showed children growing up without sunlight, families living in metal corridors, entire generations born in the cold of space. "But we survived," his voice continued. "We built, we grew, we became something new, not conquerors but survivors, not tyrants but allies. The council feared what we might become, and they were right to be afraid, because we became strong enough to challenge them." The broadcast reached billions of beings. Many had never known the true story of humanity's exile. They had been told that humans were dangerous criminals who deserved punishment. Now they learned that humans were victims who had risen from injustice. Public opinion shifted. Even within council species, voices began to call for peace. Why continue a war that could not be won? Why defend leaders who had lied? The human advance continued. Planet after planet fell or surrendered. The council's remaining fleets pulled back to defend the capital worlds, abandoning their outer territories. Spymaster activated her final plan. For years, her agents had been gathering secrets, building relationships, preparing for this moment. Now they moved together. On 12 Council, peaceful protests began. Citizens demanded an end to the war. Leaders who had supported the conflict found themselves isolated, their allies turning against them. Key military officials refused to follow orders. "The Council is not falling to our weapons," reported with satisfaction. "It is falling to its own people." General brought her stealth fleet out of the shadows. For years they had been watching, waiting, gathering information. Now they appeared in full force, surrounding the Council's capital system. The sight was terrifying. Ships that had been invisible for decades suddenly filled the sky. The Council's defenders realized they had been observed all along. Every plan, every strategy, every secret movement had been watched by human eyes. "Surrender," broadcast. "Your fleets are destroyed. Your allies have abandoned you. Your people do not support you. This war is over." For 3 days the Council debated. Some wanted to fight to the last ship. Others saw the wisdom of accepting defeat. The arguments grew heated, then desperate, then quiet. In the end, Ambassador received their answer. A diplomat named, descended from commander who had translated the original sentence of exile, stood before the Council to accept their surrender. Was calm and professional. She did not gloat, she did not insult, she simply presented the terms. "The Galactic Council will dissolve," she said. "In its place, a new federation will be formed. All species will have equal representation. No one will be exiled. No one will be forgotten. The laws will be fair and they will apply to everyone, including humanity." She looked around the chamber, at the alien faces that showed fear, shame, and exhaustion. "We did not want this war," continued. "We wanted to live in peace, but peace requires justice and justice requires change. The old ways are finished. A new era begins today." The High Speaker, the same one who had ordered the attack on humanity, bowed his head. His many hands trembled. "We accept," he said. "We accept your terms." Word spread across the galaxy. The war was over. The Council had fallen. Humanity, the species that had been exiled to die, now stood at the center of galactic civilization. On every human world, celebrations erupted. People danced in the corridors of space stations. Tears flowed on colony ships. Parents held their children and told them that the future would be different now. Admiral II looked at the stars from his flagship bridge. His ancestor had made a promise on the day of exile. He had kept that promise. "We came back," whispered, "and they will never forget us again." The reckoning was complete, but the story of humanity was far from over. The hardest work, building a new civilization from the ashes of the old, was just beginning. 1,000 years had passed since the fall of the Galactic Council. The universe had changed beyond recognition. Where there had been one galaxy of scattered civilizations, there was now an empire that stretched across 3 galaxies. Trillions of beings lived under the banner of the human sovereignty, though it had grown far beyond its original founders. Humans and their allies had built something that no one had ever imagined possible. Emperor IX sat on the eternal throne. It was not a chair of gold or jewels, but a simple seat made from metal that had come from the first human colony ship. Every emperor since the founding had sat in this same chair, a reminder of where they had come from. Was an old man now with white hair and kind eyes. He had ruled for 50 years, guiding the empire through times of peace and times of trouble. He was wise, but he was tired. He knew that his time was coming to an end, and he was content with that. Today was a special day. Historians from across the empire had gathered to witness the completion of a great work. A woman named VII, descendant of the engineer who had unlocked the ancient wormhole network, had spent her entire life writing the definitive history of humanity's journey. The Final Chronicle, she called it, 20 volumes that told the story from the exile to the present day. Stood before the emperor holding the last volume in her hands. Her hair was gray, her hands were wrinkled, but her voice was strong. "Your Majesty," she said, "it is finished. The story of our people complete and true." Took the book with gentle hands. He opened it to a random page and read silently for a moment. Then he smiled. "You have honored our ancestors," he said. "This work will be read for 1,000 years to come." The emperor's court applauded. Among them were representatives of every species in the empire. The council races that had once condemned humanity were now equal partners in civilization. The exiled species from the void were respected allies. Even races from other galaxies, discovered during the Great Expansion, had joined the community. This was what humanity had built, not through conquest alone, but through patience, wisdom, and an open hand to those who needed help. The wormhole network had grown beyond anything the ancients had imagined. 1,000,000 worlds were now connected, and ships could travel from one end of the empire to the other in days. Trade flowed freely. Ideas spread quickly. Cultures mixed and evolved together. Human philosophy had shaped much of galactic thought. The concepts of individual freedom, of fair justice, of second chances had spread from world to world. Species that had once fought each other now worked together. Old hatreds had faded over generations. But the empire never forgot its origins. On every human world there stood a monument to the exile. Some were small, just a stone pillar in a public square. Others were massive, towering structures that reached toward the stars. They all carried the same message: remember what was done to us. Remember what we overcame. Remember that we are here because we refused to die. On a planet called New Hope, a young cadet named stood before such a monument. She was 17 years old, a student at the Imperial Academy, dreaming of the day when she would command her own ship. The monument was a wall of black glass, smooth and cold. Names were carved into its surface, thousands and thousands of names. They were the people who had died during the exile, during the wilderness years, during the War of Liberation. Reached out and touched one of the names. It read, "The original translator, the woman who had recorded the exile for future generations. She had died at 83, surrounded by who had never seen Earth but who knew its stories by heart. She was your ancestor, you know." Turned, her instructor, Captain XII, stood behind her. He was a direct descendant of the captain who had discovered the wormhole network, and he carried his family's legacy with quiet pride. "I know," said. "My grandmother told me the stories. She said that never gave up hope, not even on the darkest days." Walked forward and stood beside his student. Together, they looked at the wall of names. "Hope is easy when things are going well," said. "The true test comes when everything is lost, when you have no reason to believe tomorrow will be better. That is when hope becomes courage." Nodded slowly. She understood. Her generation had never known the exile. They had never lived in the darkness of the void, but they carried the memory of those who had, and that memory gave them strength. "Captain," she asked, "do you think we deserve what we have? The empire, the peace, all of it. We did not earn it, our ancestors did." Considered the question carefully. It was a good question, the kind that showed a thoughtful mind. "We earn it every day," he finally said. "Every time we choose kindness over cruelty, every time we help someone who needs help, every time we remember where we came from and let that memory guide us towards something better." He looked at her with steady eyes. "The empire is not a gift from the past. It is a responsibility. Our ancestors gave us the foundation. We must keep building." Turned back to the monument. The names seemed to glow in the afternoon light. "They tried to erase us," she said softly. "Yes. Instead, they made us eternal." Smiled. "Yes, that is exactly what they did." In the capital city of the empire, the celebration of Chronicle continued. Musicians played songs that mixed human melodies with alien harmonies. Dancers performed movements from 100 different worlds. Food from every corner of the empire was shared among friends and strangers alike. Emperor watched from his balcony. Below him, the city stretched to the horizon, a forest of towers and gardens and flowing rivers of light. It was beautiful. It was alive. It was everything that Admiral had dreamed of when he looked into the darkness of the void. His advisor, a being from one of the council races, stood nearby. Her name was something humans could not pronounce, so they called her Starlight. "Your Majesty," Starlight said, "I have studied human history for 200 years. I still do not fully understand how your species survived the exile. By every measure, you should have died." Laughed softly. "We are stubborn," he said. "It is our greatest flaw and our greatest strength. We do not know when to quit. But stubbornness alone cannot explain what you built. The alliances, the technology, the philosophy that united the galaxy. These required more than simple refusal to die." The Emperor was quiet for a moment, then he spoke. "When everything was taken from us, we discovered what we truly were, not our ships or our planets or our technology. Those were just things. What made us human was something deeper, our love for each other, our need to create, our belief that tomorrow could be better than today." He gestured at the city below. "We built all of this not because we wanted power, but because we wanted to live. And living, truly living, means building, connecting, growing. The exile stripped away everything that did not matter. What was left was the core of who we are." Starlight considered his words. After a long pause, she bowed her head. "Perhaps," she said, "that is why the council feared you. Not because you were violent, but because you could not be broken. A species that can turn exile into empire is a species that can do anything." Nodded. "And now we share that spirit with the galaxy. Every species that joins us learns the same lesson. You can survive anything if you refuse to give up. You can build anything if you work together. You can become anything if you are brave enough to change." Night fell over the capital. The celebrations continued under stars that humans had once looked at from dying ships, wondering if they would survive to see another day. In the archives of the Imperial Palace, the 20 volumes of Chronicle took their place among the greatest works of civilization. Scholars would study them for centuries. Children would learn from them in schools across the galaxy. The story was complete, but the human journey continued. In shipyards across the Empire, new vessels were being built. In laboratories, scientists were pushing the boundaries of knowledge. In schools and academies, young people were being trained to lead the next generation. Somewhere in the vastness of space, a young cadet named looked at the stars and dreamed of the future. Her ancestors had crossed the void with nothing but hope. She would cross the universe with an empire at her back. The Galactic Council had tried to end humanity. Instead, they had created something that would endure forever. Across the stars, across the centuries, across eternity itself, humanity lived on, not as conquerors but as builders, not as exiles but as the heart of a civilization that spanned the universe. They had turned darkness into light, suffering into strength, and exile into infinity. And they were only just beginning.